welcome to Clockworks, a podcast where we explain in detail how clocks work. First, there are gears. What?
You always forget to introduce ourselves.
I'm Paul Moffat.
I'm Jan Moffat.
And now we'll explain how clocks work. Now, there are 3 hands, usually. There's a minute hand.
Paul?
What?
You should never have come.
I was just filled with a sense of such dread. We are talking today about Clockworks Chapter 26, the second last episode of Season 3, the second last episode of the show. And we're calling this episode Contact. This episode was directed by Dana Gonzalez and written by Noah Hawley and Olivia Dufault. Noah Hawley, of course, created the show, has co-writer credit on most of the episodes of this season. Olivia Dufault has co-writer credit on is the other co-writer credit for most of the episodes of this season. Dana Gonzalez is a regular cinematographer for Legion and for Fargo, the other show run by Noah Hawley. He directed Chapter 18 of Legion, which was the penultimate episode of Season 2. This, for those keeping track, is the penultimate episode of Season 3. Apparently, Dana Gonzalez directs penultimate episodes. Jan, do you want to take us through the beat by beat?
I would love to take us through the beat by beat of this, the penultimate episode of Legion. So, instead of previously, this time we get evidently on Legion and a bunch of clips of previous episodes. Charles works on his helmet and we get voiceovers of the previous episodes. Charles has a dream or vision of a theater with a matador battling a person in a bull costume on the stage. The matador stabs the bull with 2 blue daggers and the bull dies. Under the bull's mask is Charles himself. The devil with yellow eyes sits behind him and says, "You should never have come." Charles wakes and is on a plane to Morocco, arriving on a tarmac in the desert. A chauffeur with a painted picture of Charles stands next to a car and picks him up. We see the Legion logo. This time it is sewn from red thread on a board or a cloth. In the in-between space, Switch and David stumble along. She is losing teeth and time is very wonky. She says time's unstable and David gets trapped in a tiny room. We see a vision of the field where he met Farouk for the first time. He screams again. In the time between time, Farouk is trapped. In the never-ending now. We see a blue egg crack, and then the time demons appear with Farouk, eventually cracking the screen. Charles is driven to a fancy house in Morocco, and is brought down a long hall to a place where children are running around. A monkey sits in a cage, and Farouk welcomes him, talking to him about Charles's life. In a portrait, Farouk from our present appears. So we have a lot of going back and forth in this episode. As I was recapping, I really noticed.
In this episode? Very unusual for Legion going back.
Well, no, I just mean it's like... There's a lot of there's Farouk's house and there's Gabrielle's house. Back and forth.
Back and forth, I see what you mean.
Between 2 different things.
Yep.
We're not at Gabrielle's house yet, but that's going to be the whole episode is back and forth between those 2 houses.
Yeah. That way of putting it, I hadn't quite thought of it that way before, but this is really an episode about 2 houses.
Mm-hmm.
Both alike in dignity. No, not both alike in dignity at all.
No.
But 2 haunted houses, really.
Yeah.
Haunted in different ways by different ghosts.
Yes, exactly.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. We
start off with... I don't know if we need to say again, but I'll just mention to say that we didn't miss it. We noticed that there's another evidently on Legion.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole... let's talk about this whole beginning section, the prelude, when Charles is on the plane and he's having a dream of a matador or a toreador or something fighting a bull. What's the deal with that?
Well, I mean, it's something that's going to happen later. Like, this theater does actually exist in Farouk's house.
Yep.
As much as
Maybe.
anything exists
Yeah.
anywhere in this show. He goes again to this place later. Let's just say that much.
Yes.
I found it really significant that the bull is stabbed with these two very blue daggers. Like, they're wrapped in kind of blue cloth. And it really is that same blue of, like, the drugs that they've been having. It's always blue.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's David underneath. I mean, it's not David, sorry. It's Charles underneath the mask. But I think it's kind of David underneath the mask.
What do you mean?
Well, Charles doesn't know yet that, David is going to be who he grows up to be. But for the audience to have someone who's affected by, who's stabbed by, if the matador is Farouk, this blue thing, he ends up in him, he ends up taking him over. I don't know. I felt like that maybe was part of the meaning of that section.
Mm-hmm.
But also that Farouk and Charles will battle, and Charles will ultimately lose.
Yeah, this is a trap, right?
Yeah.
If Charles is underneath the bull, Charles isn't who he thinks he is in this situation. Like, it's Charles's dream. So Charles doesn't recognize himself in the dream. Or another way of putting that, Charles doesn't understand his position in this story. And I guess that means that the matador is a stand-in for Farouk, right?
I guess so.
Is it a matador or a toreador? And what's the difference?
I have literally no idea what the difference is until you said toreador, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a thing.
Bullfighters. And there's
Bullfight.
picadors, too.
Let's just say it's a bullfighter. It's a guy in a Spanish costumey thing fighting a fake bull.
Yes. The bull kind of looks like the time demons, hey? Like he's
A little
blue
bit.
and his mask
Yep, I noticed that too.
is time demon-y. Yeah, and he also, I mean, the other thing that strikes me about a bull is, remember the Minotaur from season 2?
That too. That's the other thing I noticed is it reminded me of the Minotaur.
Like,
This is like Charles's maze.
yeah. And now Charles is cast as the Minotaur in the maze, which is again like a subversion of our expectations. So we start off with someone fighting the bull. We remember the bull is the Minotaur, and we associate the blue with the time demons. We expect that then Farouk is the bull, and Charles is the bullfighter. But it turns out no one is in the position that they think they are.
Yeah, exactly. And then the devil with the yellow eyes is there.
We haven't seen the fat devil with the yellow eyes in a while.
And this time, he looks Faroukish. Like, they've changed him.
They've changed his makeup.
He does not look the same. He does not have the same makeup, and I don't think that's an accident.
No.
He looks a little bit like Farouk.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
And he wakes up with "You should never have come."
Mm-hmm.
After we watched this episode, we talked about, like, is that a callback to something? It sounds so familiar. And I searched through, and "You should never have come," or a variation on it, happens only once in the whole series. It's not a callback to something previous, except that it's what Charles says on the phone to Gabrielle in chapter 23.
Mm-hmm.
"I should never have come. Farouk is a monster. He's nothing like me." So that's why it sounds familiar. Like, "You should never have come. I should never have come" is the first thing he says when he calls Gabrielle.
Yeah. So why does David go back to that field with Farouk?
Because Farouk is still teaching David.
Hmm.
Although, again, nobody's position is what they think it is. David, in David's conception of what is about to happen and what is happening, he's going to battle Farouk to the death.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, Farouk is still mentoring and teaching David, and David uses what he's learned from Farouk to even get there in the first place.
Right.
So it's just that their relationship is still more complicated than David wants to admit that it is.
Yeah. I can agree with that.
And because they're time traveling, like, does he go back or does he just remember it? I don't know. Maybe he actually goes back to it because it's time travel.
Yeah, I felt like maybe he was watching it from a distance or something.
Yeah. But in any case, I think that's why he goes back. And then they're like... Yeah. What's the deal with this chauffeur?
Right. He has a picture of Charles.
He has a painting of Charles. Jeez Louise, that's unsettling.
Yeah, I think that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Is it's unsettling that someone you've never met who doesn't really even know you're coming in your mind, you're just going there, knows you well enough to have a likeness painted of you in oil.
Yeah.
And also this chauffeur is so warm and friendly and happy, and he's like, you're gonna go meet our king. It's great. I can't wait for you to meet this fantastic person. And the parallels here between David and his commune and Farouk and his commune, his kingdom, are very strong.
I like it. Yeah.
And you would have the women from David's commune saying similar things and acting in a similar way, inviting people to his commune, being like, we can't wait for you to meet our daddy. And so I feel like it's a clue. I mean, we already know Farouk's compound is not on the up and up, but it's a clue to like how similar the two of them are, Farouk and David.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And the chauffeur says about Farouk, it is said he had no parents, that the country itself birthed him from the mud.
Yeah.
What?
What?
Like, this is Farouk myth-making about himself.
It
right?
is, and it's, he's really old.
Yes.
We know that he's like thousands of years old or whatever, or 1,000 years old. And so, of course, they would think he has no parents. He wouldn't, in their mind.
Yeah, and maybe even in his own mind. Like, he says, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but when he talks to David in a little bit, he says, like, for a while I thought I was mad. I was ranting and raving. Mm-hmm. And, like, even to himself, it seems like his early days are kind of hazy.
Yeah, that's true.
Is the driver real? I always ask if people are real, and it's always like, I don't know, but, seems like not, right? Like, he drives Charles, and then Charles looks and he's not in the car anymore, and then he's somewhere else, and they really draw attention to, like...
That's because of the time jump.
Is it because of the time jump?
I felt like that was... There's all these, like, jumpiness in time throughout the episode.
But usually Charles doesn't notice.
No, he does later.
He does
He's
later.
Like, how did we get here?
You're right. Okay, so maybe that
I thought that was a time jump. I think, I have lots of thoughts about the people in the compound later, I think.
Okay.
So, I think maybe we'll get to that. In the in-between space thing with... like the time between time. I can't remember all what it says on the screen, but it calls it the never-ending now.
Yep.
Which I love that as poetry. And there's eggs that crack.
Yeah.
Which is a serious callback to season 2.
Yeah.
And all of that discussion over eggs. But they're not. It's not a white egg this time. It's a blue egg.
They're blue eggs. They're robin's eggs. And it's, again, the time between time and sizes aren't what they should be. Mm-hmm. They're gigantic robin's eggs. Or maybe not robin's eggs. There are other birds that have blue eggs. But, blue because blue is an important color for this show. Blue because blue indicates, like, drug use and psychosis. And blue because the time demons seem to crack out of those eggs, right? Like,
yeah, I think so. It feels like that's what they're there for.
Yeah.
Monsters cracking out of eggs, just like season 2.
Exactly. I also like the Never Ending Now reminds me of in season 2 when Ptonomy says that it's not now. Like Ptonomy doesn't believe in the present. He only believes in the past and the future.
Mm-hmm.
And then Farouk is in the present forever.
Yeah, that's interesting.
In the time between times.
Mm-hmm.
So the time demons, speaking of the time demons, they crack the time between time? Are they conscious? Are they like allied with Farouk? Or did Farouk do it? It seems like Farouk can't break free until they show up.
I think they're cracking all times.
And
so they're also cracking his time.
I mean, this is the paradox of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they're cracking any time, they have to be cracking all times.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, they're only cracking one time, then time is still being time.
Yeah. Time is confusing. So Charles walking down this hallway in Farouk's house, this like children are running around him and the monkey and it's all just like, I mean, this show is very surreal, but this moment is just like very surreal of like, it's a long hallway before he gets to Farouk.
I paused a number of times when I was rewatching it to try to figure out if this is like, it's more than one child, but is it like 2 or 3 children looped, or is it like 50 different children?
Yeah.
I couldn't really tell. They're running around too fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not just one child looped.
Oh, no, definitely not.
But I wondered for a second.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, because
they're all
definitely
dressed the same, and yeah.
Yeah, and definitely when Farouk appears, it's just one child who like grabs onto him.
Yeah.
And Farouk welcomes him and talks like about Charles and yes. Oh, I know about you and this and this and this, and that's another like very unsettling. So you've got like the portrait, and then him just knowing everything about Charles is just everything about Farouk when Charles meets him is immediately unsettling, and Charles is immediately unsettled.
Yeah,
like his gut is clearly like screaming no, but he's just so caught up in like someone who's finally like me that he ignores his horrible gut feelings.
Is it that why? I mean, I think I like that he plays Charles clearly as recognizing that something's off about Farouk, which I really like.
Mm-hmm.
But later, to jump ahead again a little bit, I'm not going to go into it, but just when David and Charles are talking, Charles seems to almost naively, like, it's not that he's so eager to meet him as he's like, I believe the good in everyone. Right?
Yeah, that's true. And the other thing is to have Charles Xavier go into a house where there are children running around who might need protection or have some kind of special abilities. You know, like, it's a reference and or origin story for, like, maybe he got some ideas from coming to this house about how he could do it better. He's optimistic. He does what he potentially is going to do what Farouk does, but better.
I mean, but better is is one way to read it.
Yes, that's true.
There's always been something a little off about Charles Xavier, too.
Yes.
And I may have said this on this show before. It's a thing that that I have said. Someone years ago told me that X-Men is like the tropes of superhero and supervillain reversed. So the Magneto is the muscly, cape-wearing, flying guy, and he's the bad guy. And Xavier is the, like, bald, mental-powered wheelchair man with minions, and he's the good guy.
Mm-hmm. You've definitely said that before on this podcast.
I've definitely said that before on this podcast. It's not my idea, but I think it's great. But there's always been, and in the Legion comics, like, David Haller is critical of Professor X as well as idolizing him.
Mm-hmm.
And so just as there's a parallel between David and Farouk, I think there's a parallel between Farouk and Charles, and maybe Charles got some ideas from the Shadow King and, like, does it for good, except, you know, there's some room for questions about Charles's methods.
How dare you question Charles Xavier in my house?
Except when he's being played by Patrick Stewart. And then he is pure and good.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So moving on.
I think that's a really good point, though. Charles seeing a school for gifted youngsters.
Exactly. So Gabrielle is in her house. She comes down the stairs to see the door in the middle of the walkway again. This repeats a second time, and then Carrie, and Sid enter through the time door. Gabrielle approaches, and they discuss the doors. Baby David cries, and Sid follows to his nursery. Sid and Gabrielle discuss babies and men, meaning and mass graves. Sid realizes that the baby is David. In Morocco, Farouk and Charles share a meal. He takes Charles to the astral plane for the first time. Charles creates a tree, and then Gabrielle and David. Farouk calls Charles his brother, and takes him then to a theater where a shadow play is performed. The magic words within the play are, "You should never have come." A vision of David appears beside Charles, and calls Farouk the King of Lies. Charles wakes and walks down the hall to the monkey to see a monkey in a cage. He goes into the monkey's mind and sees a man in a cage asking for help.
So Gabrielle's door is gone again. This is like time loops.
Yeah.
Right?
Or is there again.
Or is there again, or is gone again, or has moved again.
Yeah.
It's just like we, the viewers, are experiencing what the characters are experiencing.
Yes,
we're seeing
exactly.
something we've seen before. We're looping back around. How many times has this happened to Gabrielle? I don't know. But how many times has it happened to us? Like 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, exactly. We're very used to those doors living in that walkway. That, like, did they actually live in that walkway?
And I kind of suspect that it's only happened to Gabrielle the once.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Now, also, like, it's an interesting moment. It's actually a fantastic moment that the doors are moved. Gabrielle is, like, freaked out, and then she goes inside, and Sid just walks in after her. Sid can walk into the house because the doors have been removed.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I didn't think of that.
It's only because the doors aren't there that Sid can just follow her right in.
Right.
So who moved the doors? Infant David, maybe?
Oh, Infant David, maybe.
Because we know that he's telekinetic. We know that he's already telekinetic, right?
Right. That's a good point. Maybe Infant David moved the doors.
So I wonder if he's moving the doors, you know, unconsciously.
Mm-hmm. I love that Gabrielle has no reaction to these random strangers. I love that Gabrielle's reaction to the doors in the middle of her walkway and these random strangers there is not so much like, "What, go away, random strangers," as, "You see these doors too, right?" Like, I'm not dreaming these doors.
And then she really doesn't react to Sid just wandering into her kid's bedroom.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it's all just very... Gabrielle is just not there.
Yeah.
Like, she's so non-presence because she was in a coma. Like, she was in, like, a coma. She almost still is.
Yeah.
You know? She struggles in responsiveness.
She does.
To say the least. Yeah. And then, yeah, their whole conversation about, like, have you ever seen a mass grave? And she's, like, desensitized to individualism because of mass graves.
Yeah, and that life has no meaning. And so it's like, if life doesn't have any meaning, why are you living? Optimist, you know, silver lining, and Gabrielle's like, all animals fight to live.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I've never heard a lack of object permanence described as insane before.
Yeah.
Babies are insane.
Yep. They have no object permanence.
But it's like Gabrielle's life is a life without object permanence too.
Mm-hmm.
Like the doors specifically keep being somewhere where they're not. You know?
Yeah. So while they're having this conversation in David's bedroom, Sid is standing in the doorway, and the pattern on the wall behind her is like a bunch of lines and things, and she's standing in the middle of it, and it looks exactly like a spider web. And she's there in her usual Sid wearing black in the middle of a spider web, and she's trapped. And we had spiders mentioned in the whole wolf prey spider situation.
Yep, Farouk says not the rabbit, the spider.
Yeah. And so in this case, it's Sid who's the spider, or Sid who's trapped in the spider web.
Yeah, if Sid is framed by a spider web, is she the fly or the spider?
Yeah. Well, is she? If she's the spider, she's there to catch the time demons, Farouk, to finish things. If she's the fly, then she's been caught by Farouk, by the situation, she's stuck in a time that isn't her own. Mm-hmm. So it really could go either way.
It could. And what she's doing, like when she's framed in front of the spider web, she hasn't noticed this yet, but she's about to. When she realizes that the baby is David, it's like she's suddenly trapped.
Yes, that's true too.
By her own, like, willingly trapped, but it's like, I think that she's the fly in the spider's web. That the situation, the house, the events have contrived to put her in this position where she's like, well, now I have to do what, like, now I can't do what I came here for.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
When she says, it's not crazy babies that worry me, it's the men they become. Mm-hmm. I can't decide, to be honest, I can't decide whether I like that or don't like it. Because the stress on men, it's the men they become, is like, on one hand, it feels like a compelling statement on, like, entitled and predatory men. But on the other hand, it's like the great men theory of, like, men, they grow up to be the great men who change history, and, like, it casts, you know, babies grow up to be, I don't know, it feels like it erases women, actually.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
She's talking about one specific
I know.
man.
But it reframes the whole show as like, this is a show about Farouk and David and Charles and the great men and the poor little women they leave in their wake.
Yeah, I can really see that.
You know what I mean?
Women are not making out well in this show.
No. And that, like, I think that that line is attempting to, like, hold men to account for the impact that they have on women and other men and people around them. But what it ends up doing instead is framing the world of the show as being about the men who matter and the women who they matter to. You know what I mean?
Yep, I can see that. So moving on to Morocco. Farouk calls the kids to dinner, and he calls them little demons?
Yeah, demons, dinner time. He says it, I think, in Arabic. I can't even remember what's subtitled and what's English, because my mind just replaces it for
Exactly,
the meaning.
exactly.
But I'm pretty sure that's Arabic with subtitles. And it seems like Demon's Dinner Time seems like a innocuously charming, teasing way to talk to your children, except that A, we still really don't trust this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then B, it's an unintentional double meaning with the time demons. Time demons, it's dinner time, they're eating time. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I find it really interesting that the two of them go into the astral plane, and Charles experiences the astral plane for the first time and learns how to use his power within it. And the first thing he creates is a tree.
Yeah, what is that?
Well, he gains this knowledge and creates a tree.
Huh.
And then later on, he's given food to eat. That eat this cake, it's knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real strong, like, Adam and Eve, fruit of the tree. It's a tree of knowledge. And and he also creates something natural. He creates something of the earth. He doesn't immediately go, and he creates something, I mean, as much as nature is good, he creates something good.
Yeah.
You know, good and simple, and a tree is an interesting choice of your very, very first thing to create on the astral plane. And then his second creation is his family.
It makes me think a little bit of Lord of the Rings and what Treebeard says about Saruman, who has a mind of gears and metals.
Mm.
And Charles does not have a mind of gears and metals.
No, he has a mind
of trees.
Yeah, exactly.
And Tolkien would say that that is virtuous.
Yes, exactly. And so would I, apparently.
And so would you, apparently. I didn't see the Tree of Knowledge. That's a good spot. Like, a good call on that.
Mm-hmm.
I did notice eating to gain knowledge. I love that image. We haven't really gotten to it yet.
Yeah.
What does it mean? Like, and then Farouk and Charles are talking, and they talk about all the children, and all his children are mute.
Mm-hmm.
This is symbolic.
Yep.
I don't know if I have much more than just to say, like...
I mean, on the very surface level... if it's like literal Morocco where there are children who are mute who are being cast out in the street, the person who can understand them is a mind reader, and that's who takes them in.
Yep.
However, as we soon eventually discover, they're not really children.
And they're not really mute.
And they're not really mute.
Yeah.
And
they're little cages.
Yeah.
Farouk's MO... I mean, as we're going to see at the end here with the king trapped in the monkey, his MO is putting people in other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, sometimes it's himself in David, sometimes it's other people in himself, sometimes it's people in each other. Like, he uses minds as cages.
Mm-hmm. And he likes to collect people.
And
so he's clearly collected this king and put him in a monkey and put him in a cage.
And then when Charles and Farouk are talking, and Farouk, like I said, Farouk is still teaching David, and Farouk teaches Charles too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he can't, it feels like he's taunting him, but he also, like, genuinely enjoys showing him how things work.
Yeah.
This is a character trait of Farouk throughout, right? He
wants more people to know how to use their power. He wants other powerful mutants to come and play with him.
Yeah, he wants them, once they're powerful, he wants them to be like him. He wants Charles to be like him, maybe under him, but like, he genuinely, I think, even at this stage, is, despite all the trappiness of it, he's genuinely happy to meet Charles and genuinely happy to teach Charles how to use his powers better. Even though he's planning to trap him and squish him and, you know, collect him, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And he, in the future, will be genuinely happy to teach David how to use his powers. He wants him to use them in the way that he wants them to use them. He wants them to use them to become a little Farouk and subjugate people.
Yeah.
But he's still like...
But if he wants Charles to... be like him or be his friend, why does he say within the play, you should never have come? Or is that just legitimately part of the play?
That's a good question. Why does he say you should never have come? Because no matter whether he wants Charles as a friend and ally, he just wants him to be an evil friend and ally, or whether he wants Charles to be his prey. Either way, why is he telling Charles he shouldn't have come? I think he's toying with him.
Well, maybe, I mean, if what Farouk says is true, that he puts on these shadow plays, he's called the Shadow King, wink wink. He puts on these shadow plays for these kids all the time. This is the story that he tells. The magic words really are, you should never have come. He gave Charles a vision before he came to Farouk's compound or palace or whatever, that he was going to say you should never have come. He's like the devil with the yellow eyes in that vision, but it's still Farouk.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't actually think he shouldn't have come. He thinks, I sent you this vision so you knew when I said that it was me. And this is my little wink wink at you.
It does feel throughout that Farouk, he says he's a strategist in this season, but he enjoys playing with people for the pleasure of it.
Exactly.
Even when it goes counter to his ends.
Mm-hmm.
He can't help but taunt Charles, even if it means springing the trap a little early, or hinting the trap before it's fully sprung. He can't help taunt Charles.
Yeah, exactly.
And he also, the conversation where he talks about Charles, he says, you've never been to the astral plane. Powers like yours, you don't even realize it. Powers like yours is our hint that Charles is more powerful than Farouk is.
Yeah.
Or as powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But, powers like yours. Not powers like ours. But,
yeah.
He recognizes Charles as more powerful than he is. But just like he recognizes David as more powerful than he is. But he's older, more experienced, and less scrupulous. He knows how to use his powers, and Charles still hasn't figured it out at this point.
Mm-hmm.
David still hasn't quite figured it out at this point. And even when they know how, Farouk is willing to use his powers in ways that Charles certainly isn't.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's move on.
I have two more things about this little section before we move on. That one is just that the shadow creature that Farouk makes is another minotaur.
Yep.
And the other one is just this phrase that Farouk says when he, sees that Charles is like him. And again, it's this moment that I feel like plays this line between taunting and genuine. He's being honest about how he feels. Maybe even doesn't realize it. But that, what a privilege it is to see and be seen. He says to Charles.
Yes.
And it really is.
Mm-hmm.
And also what a danger.
Exactly.
To see and be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm ready for you to move on.
I will move on. The time door opens and David enters the room, talking to his father. He takes them into his mind, and David gives Charles a piece of cake, and he eats it, taking in all of David's life in a series of flashes. David tells him what's going to happen, and that he's in a trap. But now he has him. In Gabrielle's house, Sid explains to Carrie about baby David, and Carrie is confused why they don't just kill him as a baby. Sid says they can save the baby, but not the adult David, and Carrie agrees to help. In Farouk's house, Charles comes to breakfast with David, who is dressed as a soldier. When Farouk tries to go into his head, he finds only music and images from the commune, and then David thinks at him, you should never have come. Farouk is thrown off and leaves the table. Switch enters and collapses, losing her teeth. Time jumps again, and Switch can't wake up. David takes Charles into his mind again and tries to explain. But the doors all rattle, and when Charles goes to one, it opens to another David, and then another. They say they're here for justice. More Davids appear, all saying, "Daddy." Charles uses his power to escape.
Clockworks table! David and Charles are sitting at a Clockworks table.
They sure are.
I think that is a shout out to us specifically.
Absolutely. They are definitely listening to our podcast, which comes out way later than they air the show.
Yeah. I think for sure.
For sure.
So, thanks for listening, guys. Noah, we're mutual fans. We appreciate each other.
Yeah, there's no way. Anyway, the Clockworks table. I mean, obviously, shout out to the Clockworks hospital, which our podcast is named after.
Well, and I was facetious, but yeah, time and clocks and clockworks and the sense of gears. It was the name of our podcast, and it's been a motif through the whole show, right?
Exactly.
It's not a coincidence that we named our show that.
No, not at all. And I think this, it's sometimes this show makes very much literal the metaphor.
Yep.
And this is an example of that. So this is what I was talking about earlier, where David gives Charles a piece of cake and he eats it, and it's the cake of knowledge, and Charles just suddenly gains the knowledge of David's entire life.
I love this image of eat this and you know stuff. And this isn't, you pointed out the biblical allusion, but even if we ignore even if we pretend not to know the biblical allusion, this isn't an original concept. Eat something and gain knowledge.
Yeah.
But I really love, first of all, I love that image always. I think it's really, there's something that seems very right about it, because learning something is easy to metaphorize as ingesting something. Mm-hmm. When you eat something, you're taking material, physical objects and incorporating them into your being.
Yeah.
That's what eating things is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what knowledge is you're taking ideas and incorporating them into your being, and now they're part of who you are. So I love that metaphor, and I love the visual effect, too, of, the scenes projected onto Charles's face.
Yeah. I like that it's a layer cake. I don't know, something about that, it having layers, David has multiple personalities and layers within it.
You are blowing my mind.
Cakes have layers. I don't know, maybe that's taking it too far, but I feel
it's taking it not far enough.
David's got layers, and so the knowledge of him comes with lots of buttercreamy goodness. I've been watching a lot of baking shows lately.
Like an onion or a parfait.
Exactly. Do we think that... Does Charles just gain the knowledge of, David's entire life? Or the Cliff Notes version that we're seeing? Or something else?
I think that David created the cake.
Yeah.
And so I think David curated the knowledge he wants Charles to have.
Yeah.
He decides what it is that he thinks Charles needs to know. And I don't think that he's being deceptive.
Yeah.
I think he is being honest as far as that goes. But I don't think, Charles now knows all of David's entire experience. That would be more than a slice of cake. This is David has condensed the things that Charles specifically needs to know according to David. So it's curated.
Mm-hmm. It's specifically what Farouk has done to him.
Yes.
In his mind.
Yeah.
What he thinks Farouk has done to him. I love the conversation between Sid and Carrie, female Carrie.
Me too.
About, what, he's a baby. Why can't we just kill him as a baby? It's just it's a classic, if you met Hitler as a baby, would you kill him?
It would be super easy.
It would be super easy. Babies are, super easy to kill.
I think that was one of the funniest moments. That list line of it'd be super easy to kill a baby.
Exactly.
And I like Sid specifically calling out, Melanie and Oliver taught me.
Yeah.
There are people you can save and people you can't.
Mm-hmm.
We can't save David. We can save baby David.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's like the, it is the paradox, would you kill baby Hitler? And it seems like a played out that that thought experiment.
Yeah.
But the thing that people, they take it in a direction that people don't usually take it. Like when Sid at first says, we've changed time just by being here, I was a little bit like, yeah, we've all seen Back to the Future. I don't begrudge them explaining that, but that wasn't a new insight at all.
Mm-hmm.
But we can save this David has moved from someone you can't save to someone you can save because we've traveled in time.
Mm-hmm.
And now we can save this person.
Yep.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. Same. This is such a different Sid. Like, it really does feel like that, 20 minutes, entire new life lived has really changed Sid. I can't decide if I like it or don't like it. Because I feel like maybe it's, Deus Ex Machina, you just change the personality of the person. But I like the direction they've taken her in.
Yeah.
I like the new insight she's having because she lived this whole different life. And that it makes sense that she's having them. She didn't change for no reason.
Yeah. I mean, it is... Maybe it's Deus Ex Machina, except that they gave us an entire episode of her experiencing these things that she has grown from. That's not true. Ex Machina. That's plot.
Yeah, that's
right?
my point. Yeah, it would have been worse if they had, she wakes up and says, I lived a whole different life, and we never saw that. We had to see that happen.
And, it justifies, that episode could be a digression, a enjoyable digression, but a digression. We talked about that when we talked about the episode. But we see here some payoff for it, that not just payoff in terms of now Sid has learned something, but audience payoff, that it doesn't feel like an abrupt or unmotivated shift, because we spent an hour or 40 minutes slowly watching her learn all this stuff in TV time. That almost is a lifetime.
Yeah, it's
right?
true. It's true.
Lots of characters on TV shows learn something over the course of an episode and can be changed at the end of it. That's enough time for the audience to understand that things have changed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking about the episode in season 2 that was the alternate futures with all the different Davids, and how something in each of those Davids' past changed who he was in the future. And so what David is going to come from changing him as a baby? Is it going to be one of those futures? Is it going to be a totally different one? We've already seen that it can happen.
Right.
We've had this development in the past. We've seen the possibilities for David. So we know that he can have a different future based on what happens in his past.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like I said when we talked about the Sid's childhood episode, I said that alternate realities episode didn't entirely ever pay off, but it still was worth it. But maybe this is the payoff.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe not the payoff, but this is it continuing to pay off.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
When David comes as a soldier, why? Is it just because of historical reasons that he's dressed as a soldier? Why is he dressed as a soldier? He's there to fight?
He's there to wage war.
Right.
He is, he's there because an American in Morocco would be a soldier, I guess, but really, he's there to wage war on Farouk. And it's a sign to him that he's not there for just hanging out. He's not who he says he is.
And he, much like Farouk can't help but spring the trap early on Charles, David can't help but give Farouk clues of who he is, right?
Yeah.
He's not waiting to surprise him fight.
Oh, not at all.
He tips him off.
Yeah.
Is that a mistake? Is that strategy?
I think that's strategy.
Or is it just like recognition that you can't really hide something from a mind reader anyway?
That too. And he tries to go into his head and just finds like David thinking about the
I said
commune.
Captain. I said what? Yep.
Yeah. And then David thinks you should never have come. And that freaks Farouk right out.
It sure
it's
does.
amazing. I think that's really well done. And that's the 3-beat in our 3 beats of that. So we've got the devil with yellow eyes saying it, we have Farouk himself saying it, and we have David saying it. And so I feel like, is the devil with yellow eyes real? Is he both David and Farouk together? What exactly is, in the end, what is he? Because here we are at the penultimate episode, and he's still there.
I have wavered through the course of the show, but I think in this episode, he is the most plausible read is that he's Farouk.
Mm-hmm.
Because, the structural mechanism of a 3-beat is you introduce, reinforce, and subvert.
Yeah.
That's why 3. Once is a thing, twice shows that it is a pattern, and the third time changes the pattern. So the first time the devil with the yellow eyes, the second time it's Farouk, that's reinforcing. This is a thing Farouk says. Farouk is saying this. It's a warning that Farouk says. He said it once as the devil with the yellow eyes, and once as Farouk. It's reinforcing the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's subverted when it said to Farouk by someone else.
Right. Yeah, okay, I can kind of see that. But David still talks in the devil with yellow eyes voice sometimes.
He does. And he does in front of Charles, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I kind of think that the devil with yellow eyes is some kind of amalgam of David and Farouk. But I don't think we see enough in this episode to make me think that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that from other things.
Yeah.
Or I wonder that. And then Switch shows up. Switch looks terrible.
Oh, yeah. Meeting David has not done Switch well.
No.
Not at all. She's losing, all of her teeth. And then, she just collapses into a coma.
Yep.
Or I guess not, I'm extrapolating to coma, but, asleep. She passes out.
And we hear David say, time is the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
I like that, too, is a statement not only on this moment. It's one of these double meanings or triple meaning phrases, right? Because time is the enemy can mean there are blue monsters who are time eaters. I'm calling them time to be succinct and vague, but they're a literal enemy that we have to fight.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also, this is a theme of this entire show. That time is the enemy.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like a subversion isn't right. It's like a variation on the biblical, the last enemy to be overcome is death. Time is the enemy.
Yeah.
In this show, death isn't the enemy. Time is the enemy.
That's true.
Charles asks who Switch is, and David says she's no one, a means of getting here.
Yeah. Harsh.
Cold.
And this is the David that can't be saved.
Exactly.
This is he's our main character, we're still sympathetic to him in some ways, but then he says stuff like this, and you're like, you can't be saved. You're just using people, completely using them.
And we
for your own means.
At the beginning of this episode, we saw him talking to Switch in we could wonder, is he just manipulating her? Or does he, like, he wants something from her, but he could still actually care about her. And he gives her, you know, his David-y charm, his Dan Stevens charm, and you're like, okay, maybe. And then here, the mask drops, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're exactly right. This is the David that can't be saved. It's not just how he treated, I mean, it's not just some, a read on the show has been like that he sexually assaults Sid, and that's a single act he can't come back from. But I think it's so much more everything about how he interacts with the world.
Yeah.
Has been revealed in moments all along the show. Mm-hmm. And here's another one of these moments.
Yeah, exactly.
Switch is no one, she's a means to an end. That's how he sees everyone. Mm-hmm. That's even how he sees Charles.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And Charles says, everyone is someone.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I was referring to earlier when I was like, Charles recognizes Farouk's malevolence, but still has this optimism. I don't think that it's, like, maybe it's naive, but I don't think it is ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And it's very Charles Xavier to think everyone is worth saving.
Yeah.
So in David's mind, the doors rattle in, like, super creepy way. And, of course, we know that it's going to be more Davids, but it also, there's a part of me that's like, is it going to be like the Angriest Boy or the Devil with Yellow Eyes or something? Ah! But no, it's just more Davids. And so they're like, we want, like, revenge. No, justice. And, like, arguing with each other again.
I have to just, because the delivery on that, the comic timing between Dan Stevens and himself,
yeah,
I have to do credit for it, because when it actually is not arguing, it's, what do you want? Revenge. Justice. Yes, justice. It's like,
yeah,
no, revenge. He's just like, yeah, revenge. Justice. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no arguing, actually.
Yeah.
Revenge and justice are interchangeable.
It's true. It is Dan Stevens with himself, so is quite good to have that kind of comedic timing with your own self.
Yes.
And of course, all the doors open. They all start talking about Daddy, which is exactly what happens to David with his commune. They surround him, right, saying Daddy. So it's both what he desires from other people, but what he actually desires to be doing that with his own father, and has serious daddy issues, and he projected them onto, or used those issues to find other people with that issue for his commune.
The way that he is trying to be the daddy of his commune, he's trying to fill the very specific role that is unfilled for himself.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Sid asks Gabrielle, is he a good baby? And I have to just, mostly what I have to say about this show is either positive or neutrally analytic. But I hate that stupid question in fiction and in real life. Is he a good baby? What is a good baby?
Yeah.
What the bleep do you mean by that? Is he a good baby?
Yeah. You get that question when you're a new parent and it makes no sense.
Is he a good baby? No. Unfortunately, we got one of the evil ones.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like it's not really about the show.
It's just like the, what are you having? And I would always be like, puppy. You know? Like, you're actually jumping ahead because I haven't talked about that part yet. So let me recap that little section and then we can even go back to that a bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So Sid chops wood and talks to Gabrielle about good babies. Sid talks about having 2 childhoods and feeling safe in her second one. All baby David wants is to feel safe. Gabrielle talks about her grandmother and mother having mental sickness. Sid tells her just to love David like his life depends on it and not to let the monsters in. Sid realizes that their time demons have arrived and warns Carrie and Carrie, who freeze mid-fight. Parts of baby David's room start disappearing until he's in a crib outside, as a time demon hovers over him. At the last moment, Sid hits the time demon and rescues him, but the time demons are infiltrating the house. David meditates in the air with his inner self telling him to wake up. Switch sleeps but calls for her papa. Farouk floats and meditates while Charles watches him. A child approaches Charles and asks him to help her. He reads her mind and sees dozens of people in a cage calling for help. Charles talks to David and calls Farouk a monster, and they agree to work together to crush him. But the present-day Farouk escapes from the in-between time and finds his past self. And we cut to credits.
So the conversation, apart from the is he a good baby question, then the answer to that question leads to this conversation about childhood and parenting.
Yes.
What do you think of that conversation?
I like the whole thing with Sid, like we talked about a second ago, but like with Sid having these two childhoods, she suddenly has this insight into what good parenting and bad parenting can do.
Yeah.
And that all it really takes is like someone to really love them and teach them how to be a person when they're one of a kind.
Yep.
Having that childhood with Sid and with Melanie and Oliver gave her the answer to that question, that it's just a parent loving you is what helps. And so she's able to impart that wisdom on Gabrielle.
She says all he wants is to feel safe.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it and hate it.
Yeah.
Because I like what you just said about Sid learning some, like, the effects of what Sid has learned are rippling through in very pleasing ways narratively. I really like it quite a lot. And I like the idea of, like, loving and caring for children matters to them. Like, that maybe isn't a groundbreaking insight, but it is a groundbreaking insight, though. But then she's like, there's no good stronger than a mother's love. It's like, I know because she's talking to Gabrielle, who is the mother, but it's very, I feel, unnecessarily gendered in like a,
yeah,
you know, like, there's no love greater than a mother's love. Fathers, who cares about, and mothers, all you need to do and can do and are good for is loving your child. And Gabrielle, who has mental illness and obviously postpartum depression.
Yeah.
You aren't loving your child enough, and shame, shame, shame on you for not loving your child. That's the only good that you're good for. Love him. Love him now. Do it. Love him. Go. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
It does not feel helpful to me.
Mm-hmm.
We have talked, I like the conversation they have about Gabrielle's mental illness, and we maybe come back to that in 1 second. We've talked about other aspects of her mental illness. No one, including us, has said the words or put the label on postpartum depression, but she's disengaged from her baby. There's a word for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if the creators of the show didn't know it.
Yeah, exactly. Which I'm sure they do.
But even if they weren't deliberately having that in their mind, what we have seen on screen is a woman with postpartum depression.
Yeah.
And it feels to me like Sid is scolding her for that.
I can see that. I can see that perspective in a big way. I felt like it was her saying, it's okay if you're not acting the right way, if you don't know what to do exactly. All you need to do is love him and protect him. You don't need to worry about the other stuff. But loving and protecting someone in her state is actually the hardest thing. So
right.
maybe that is, your point is, still stands.
Like, I like what they were going for, but I don't think they landed it.
No. And I don't think that even if they reset the timeline or whatever, that Gabrielle is going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like, she's not going to be okay.
No.
And the, like, I don't know, it's like the 50s, but...
Or something, yeah.
Or something. Then I'm like, maybe Charles could get her some help, but if she actually lives in the 50s or 40s or whatever, then
Maybe Charles can give her some help if he's there.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And that's the other thing that I said maybe we would circle back to. But in this conversation, Gabrielle, we've kind of seen it already. I think the audience has already figured it out, but Sid figures out and Gabrielle states out loud that it's hereditary.
Yeah.
Mental illness is hereditary in her family.
Mm-hmm.
And so David is a mutant, but he's not a sport.
No.
Right?
He's a mutant from his father and mentally ill from his mother.
Yeah. And it's a different kind of... I mean, this is what they could have sold better, what they could have tried to land is, it's a different kind of who teaches you to be normal when you're one of a kind. We've spent a lot of time worrying about who teaches you to be normal when you're a mutant. But what David needs is his mentally ill mother to teach him how to be normal when he's mentally ill. Mm-hmm. And for her to do that, she needs to be okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And the show seems not to recognize that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They still have not solved exactly the reason why they would have given him away.
Yeah.
In the first place.
They kind of never actually address that.
No, they don't.
They dance around it in this episode. And I mean, we've seen the next episode. They never address it.
Yeah, exactly. But
so
there's a lot of question marks in this whole show, so it's just another question mark.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like, I don't need all my questions answered.
Exactly.
I don't mind asking them again, drawing attention to the fact that they're unanswered, but I don't need the show to answer them all. That's fine with me.
Mm. Yeah, exactly.
So the time demons show up, and Carrie pulls out a sword. You're going to fight time with a sword? Carrie...
She'll fight out anything with a sword. That's her weapon of choice. It's her sword.
I mean, like, okay.
And like, male Carrie is just like, am I sick or whatever? And she's like, you have a collapsed lung and whatever. Like, yeah, you're not okay, Carrie. No matter what happens, you're probably gonna die.
Yeah.
And so female Carrie is just doing everything she can. Like, well, I can't beat anything, so I'm just gonna pull out a sword. It's helped her a lot in the past. It's
like, it reminds me a bit of this is the second episode in a row where I've made a Buffy the Vampire Slayer reference, but the Buffy the Vampire Slayer when Buffy is coping with grief and she's like, just point me to something I can hit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Carrie is that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she always has been, and it's fantastic. Like, she's so... Like, sing the praises of Carrie for a second. I love male Carrie because I love Bill Irwin so much, and his performance is amazing.
Yeah.
But, like, female Carrie also, this, like, mix of naive innocence and extreme violence.
Mm-hmm.
And the violence is... It's not a dichotomy. Like, the violence is an aspect of her innocence. She interacts with the world directly and physically, and point me to something I can hit. That is a kind of naive innocence.
Yeah, yeah. And all that happens is she gets froze.
Yep.
This, like, the time demons taking down, like, the wall, just, like, everything disappearing from David's room bit by bit is a really well done effect. Just, like, in terms of, like, technically in the show. It's a really well done effect. It's probably practical because they're really good at that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But also it's like, are the time demons are coming specifically for David?
Seems like.
It seems. And so they are actually focused on him.
We asked in whatever episode, Mail Carey, and I can't remember whether it was Mail Carey or Protonymy as the mainframe, asked whether the time demons were sentient or animals.
Mm-hmm.
And we've never really had a full answer.
Yeah, exactly.
But I feel like we have had enough hints that they're more sentient than animal.
Yeah.
Because they're coming for David, and they're coming for David because he defeated them before.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah.
This is like, they have an agenda.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But apparently they can be knocked out by, like, basically a hammer to the head.
Yeah, I still, like, okay, I'll allow it. You know, like...
Yeah.
Because they're time demons, they can manipulate time, but they're still sentient and conscious and pointing into directions. They eat time, but they still exist in time to some degree. And they're still causal, right?
Mm-hmm.
They do things, and then it has an effect on things. So if they're not looking... Like, they have to look. They have faces. They have eyes.
Right.
I just don't think you can be fast enough to attack them. But you can sneak up on them. I'll buy that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Switch says, "Daddy, I need you, I'm scared."
Mm-hmm.
Is she calling David, or is she calling her father?
I didn't even think about her actually calling David. I assumed she was calling her actual father.
Because she was part of the commune that calls David Daddy.
Yeah, that's true. But we never heard her call him that.
We didn't. It's another deliberately ambiguous, I think. Well, I mean, we know that David doesn't care about her.
Mm-hmm.
And she believes that her father doesn't care about her. I mean, we've seen that through the season, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very pathetic.
So we end with Charles and David coming together.
Mm-hmm.
Charles and David coming to, what do they say, crush him.
Yes.
Because there's two of them now. Because they're both powerful mutants. They're probably both more powerful than Farouk. They can beat him. But then, of course...
But now there's two of him.
There's two of him, too. We get this nice twist at the end. And it's a perfect little, like, game changer twist moment. I really enjoy that.
Yes.
As the writing of the show. I'm excited for the next episode.
Yeah. The moment of Charles and David coming together, what really struck me in that conversation was not so much let's come together and crush Farouk. That was great. And the twist of there's two Farouks, like, that was beautifully executed. The perfect kind of, like you said, game changer, where by the end of the episode you're like, I should have known that was coming.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't. Maybe you did. Maybe you, dear listener, did. I didn't see that coming. But when it did, I was like, of course! That's the best. But David and Charles' conversation, Charles says to David, I was supposed to have time to know this, how to be a father. And time is the enemy. This is like what I meant earlier by time is the enemy, is not just time demons, is not just supernatural things. Like, that is because time skipped, but that's also what it feels like to be a parent.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's my experience of parenting anyway. Things keep coming at me that I thought I was going to have time to get to better at.
Mm-hmm.
Learn how to be a father, and suddenly you are one.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a really strong statement of, like, what the show is all taking metaphors and making them real, and that's just this little moment of taking it back into the metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is all of this a metaphor for? I was supposed to have time to know how to be a father.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
We also didn't say, if we're coming to the end of the episode, we didn't comment on, I don't know what I have to say about it except yikes, that the children are all cages.
Oh, right, yeah. We kind of talked about that before, but the monkey is the king, and all of the children are his former subjects.
Supporters. Loyalists, whatever.
Exactly. So, like, Farouk just came in. This was a palace with a specific king. He came in and took over and put them in mental cages.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is disturbing.
Both for the people and for, like, the kids.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's, like, so monstrous.
It is, exactly. He is a monster.
And it's enough to make Charles change his mind.
Mm-hmm.
I like it as that, too. As, like, motivation for Charles to be like, no, this guy is irredeemable. He's not someone... He's beyond saving, as Sid would say. Like, there's some people we can save. Charles is learning the same thing Sid is, but from the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
He has thought everyone is savable.
Yeah.
And old Farouk says, what a journey I have had. That's also, I think, not just in this episode, in this series.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other things to say?
I think that is all I have to say about this episode. We're been talking for a long time, and we have one more episode to go. We have already watched it since we're a little behind, but I'm excited to get into it and talk about the last episode of the series and the show.
Can I talk about the music?
You can talk about the music.
I'm like so bittersweet feelings about doing next week's episode.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that next week, I suppose. And by the way, for you the listeners, we'll do a recap of the last episode, then we'll do a season 3 retrospective, then we'll do a series long retrospective.
Yeah.
Maybe more, but probably not. But we'll do at least 2 episodes more after we've talked about the last episode. So
yes.
So Legion is over, but Clockworks isn't quite over yet. Anyway, but the music in this episode. The first song we hear is Contact by Brigitte Bardot. This is when Charles is talking to the cabbie about Farouk, and the title card comes up.
Mm-hmm.
It is in French, but the translation into English is, a meteorite pierced my heart. You on Earth have doctors. Contact. I need a mercury transfusion. I lost so much by this injury. Contact. Take off my spacesuit. Remove this sidereal dust. Contact. Understand me, I need at all costs. Join my love in the galaxy. Or to rejoin... I'm reading a translation, and now I looked up at the French, and the translation's not bad. I need at all costs to rejoin my love in the galaxy. Contact. So, I mean, the word contact, we used this as the title of this episode. It's about Charles making contact with Farouk. But it's also about, like, this is a alien trying to contact Earth to be repaired, to be healed, so that they can return back to space and gain contact again with their love in the galaxy. This episode is about Charles's contact with Farouk, but also David's contact with Charles.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's both contact that does harm and also contact that heals.
Mm-hmm.
We have several songs that have no lyrics. Instrumental classical music, Arabic classical music. Bashraf Nawa Athar by Hicham Khami. Hicham Khami is a Moroccan classical composer. And Bashraf Nawa Athar, I don't speak Arabic. So according to Google Translate, that means new meaning, of course. I don't know if that's an accurate translation.
Yeah, hard to say.
So I'm not going to do a big, like, here's what that title means, because I don't even know if that's an accurate translation. It's Moroccan music, though. It's not just generic Eastern music. Like, it's specifically Morocco.
That's awesome. Good on you, Legion.
And then we have later on another song also by Chichamchami called Samai Nawa Athar. How Much I Have was the translation that Google gave me for that. Again, I don't know how much stock to put in that. And finally, we have a song, Badru Zuhar, which is Batter Flowers. I don't know if that's an accurate translation either, but it's written by Hassan Eraji, who is also from Morocco. He is a little more of a like folk classical musician, and he's like popular throughout North Africa, but he's from Morocco. So all three of the instrumental songs are specifically from Moroccan composers.
That is super cool.
And then finally, during like the shadow puppet show, the music that plays is from opera by Bela Bartok called Bluebeard's Castle.
Like the pirate.
No, not like the pirate.
No, sorry. Like the king who kills all his wives.
Like the fairy tale king who kills all his wives or rich man.
He's not a pirate?
Blackbeard is a pirate. Blackbeard is not a pilot. Blackbeard is a pirate. He was a real person who tied smoke into his beard.
I thought that...
Bluebeard is a rich man. Possibly, there's no explanation in the fairy tale for why his beard is blue, but it's a hint that he's some kind of magical fairy, possibly.
Okay.
And he has a fabulous house and fabulous wealth, and he picks a girl to come live in his castle and to be his wife, and it's an amazing fairy tale for her. But then it turns out she finds a room in his castle where all his previous wives' bodies are. So, Bluebeard's castle, like he is this host who welcomes someone in with smiling open arms and seems to be hospitable, but actually his castle is a trap and he's a mass murderer.
Right.
Like the parallels here to Farouk are plain.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically the part that they play is Door 5, A Lazde Ez an Birodalam. I don't even know what language that is. Bartok. It's like Romanian, I believe. But anyway, it means, see, this is my realm. It's completely appropriate for Farouk showing Charles, this is my realm. You've come into my home. This is everything I rule over. And this is the part in the opera where Bluebeard is still seducing his wife. And like, this is the amazing thing that I will have for you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's obviously a trap. That's all the music. Little bits of What by Captain Sensible. We already talked about that. I don't think we need to go into it.
Yep. I have a little bit to say about the costuming, only that blue is very significant in this episode. We have all the children dressed in blue. We have the blue daggers. We have Gabrielle is in a bluish outfit. It's just the blue has become the main color for the past. It's a very blue past, and I think that is because it's always blue.
Yes.
So, one more episode to go. If you have any questions or comments for us before we do that, you can contact us on Twitter at ClockworksCast. We're also on Reddit and Patreon and Facebook and what's the other Instagram thing? Clockworkscast is our name everywhere, basically.
One more. You've said this in the past, and I just want to say what you have said. You said, if you have something to tell us before the next episode, or if you're listening to this in the future and we've already recorded the next episode, even if it's years in the future, we would still love to hear your thoughts about Legion or your thoughts about Clockworks. So don't let, I've missed my chance, stop you.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll still have that Twitter handle open for a long time in the future.
Yeah. So, I've been Paul Moffat.
I've been Jan Moffat.
Goodbye.